Meridian Gate Station floated in quiet orbit above the blue-green world of Vrax 3, a jewel of glass panels, glowing transit rings, and curved silver towers. Ships from many species came and went every hour, carrying diplomats, traders, scientists, and tourists. It was a place built on cooperation, but also on careful distance. After all, the coalition of Vrax did not trust everyone equally, especially not humans. Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward knew this too well. As he stepped out of the human shuttle and onto the polished metal floor of Docking Ring C, several Vraxian guards watched him closely. Their tall figures, scaled skin, and bright gold eyes stayed locked on him with silent suspicion. Elias did not mind. He had served on many stations where humans were newcomers. He simply adjusted his uniform collar, offered the guards a polite nod, and joined the rest of his envoy team as they walked into the heart of the station. Elias was a security officer known for patience and calm thinking. He was the sort of man who never raised his voice, even during training drills. He noticed details, read patterns quickly, and acted with quiet confidence. His team depended on him more than they realized. The human delegation had come to Meridian Gate to discuss trade routes and scientific exchange. The meeting was meant to ease growing tensions between humanity and the Vrax coalition. Though the two groups had worked together for years, mistrust still hung in the air, especially among the Vrax leaders. But no one expected that today, everything would change because of one simple moment he could not have predicted. The commercial sector of the station stretched like a long, bright tunnel of shops, food stalls, and open plazas. Elias's job was to walk a few steps behind the diplomats, scanning the area and quietly marking any risks. Nothing unusual appeared on his sensors. Families walked by with shopping bags. A group of human tourists took photos of the glowing architecture. A pair of Vraxian engineers repaired a panel near the upper walkway. Elias had just finished checking his wrist display when the lights flickered. At first, it was small, just a soft blink overhead, like a power fluctuation. People kept moving, barely noticing, but then the lights flickered again, harder this time. The floor vibrated with a low hum. Elias frowned and tapped his display. "Station grid is unstable," he muttered. "That's not normal." Before he could alert the diplomats, the station alarms activated with a sharp, ringing tone. A robotic voice echoed through the corridor. "Warning. Sector 4 experiencing system interruption. Please move to the nearest emergency point." Crowds stirred. Parents grabbed their children. Merchants pulled down shutters. Elias was already moving. "Stay close," he instructed his team, guiding them toward a safe zone. He scanned the area quickly. There was no sign of danger yet, no smoke, no structural collapse, but something deeper was wrong. The hum grew louder. Panels along the walls blinked red, and then, out of the corner of his eye, Elias noticed a small figure on the upper walkway, a young Vraxian girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old. She was separated from the crowd, standing near a section of railing where a maintenance conduit was sparking. "Why is she up there alone?" Elias whispered. Before he could move toward her, the floor of the upper walkway shook violently. A power conduit on the wall popped open with a loud crack. Bright blue energy spilled out in erratic arcs. The girl screamed and stumbled back, too close to the edge. Elias didn't think. He didn't debate. His body simply moved. He ran. He sprinted past confused civilians, past a merchant cart that had tipped over, past a pair of Vraxian guards trying to manage the evacuation. The diplomats shouted after him, but their voices were lost in the ringing alarms. Elias slid to a stop at a maintenance ladder and climbed 2 steps at a time until he reached the upper walkway. A fresh burst of sparks shot out from the broken conduit, startling the girl into near paralysis. The railing beside her trembled. "Hey!" Elias called. His tone was calm, steady, not frightening. "I'm here. You're all right." The girl looked at him with wide gold eyes filled with fear. Another spark burst. She flinched. The walkway lights flickered off, then on again. The conduit's casing began to split even more, the metal bending outward under internal pressure. Elias made his choice. He stepped between the girl and the broken conduit. extending one arm behind him to guide her away and to keep her shielded. "Stay close to me," he said gently. "We're leaving together." The girl clung to the back of his uniform, trembling. Elias tapped the emergency override on a nearby panel. It sputtered, but did not respond. He tried again. The station grid was still unstable. That meant no automated shield barriers would deploy to block the energy surges. He looked around for another solution. Only one option presented itself. Manual override. A small handle on the wall, barely visible behind the flickering lights. Not convenient. Not easy. But it might work. He angled his body to cover the girl completely and reached the handle with his free hand. He pulled it down hard. A loud metallic clang echoed through the walkway as a protective barrier began to slide down between them and the damaged conduit. It moved slowly, too slowly. Sparks scattered across the floor. A warm rush of static brushed his shoulder. He kept his body over the girl, steady as stone. The barrier finally locked into place. Only then did Elias allow himself to breathe out. "You're safe now," he told her softly. She whispered something in Vraxian, her words shaky and emotional. Elias didn't understand the language well, but the gratitude was clear. He guided her toward the stairs. The station's emergency teams were already rushing through the lower level, calming crowds and securing unstable sections. Halfway down the steps, a tall Vraxian woman sprinted toward them, her scales a deep silver blue, her expression filled with frantic worry. She wore the dark uniform of high-ranking officials, her eyes locked onto the child with fierce relief. "Sailry!" she cried, pulling the girl into her arms. The girl hugged her tightly, still shaken. Then she pointed at Elias and said, in broken human speech, He saved me." The woman turned her sharp gaze to Elias. Her eyes narrowed, first in shock, then suspicion, then something he couldn't identify. "You," she said quietly. Her voice carried authority and a hint of disbelief. "You protected my daughter?" Elias stood straight. "Yes, ma'am. She was in danger. Anyone would have done the same." "That is not true," the woman replied, her tone serious and precise. "Not anyone." He did not argue. He simply nodded. Another Vraxian guard ran up to the woman and spoke urgently in her language. She replied curtly and sent him away. Elias took a step back, ready to return to his team. "She's safe now. That's what matters." But the woman raised her hand, stopping him. "Wait." Elias paused. She studied him closely, as if searching for hidden motives. Her eyes narrowed again. Not in anger, but in deep thought. Finally, she spoke in a slow, controlled tone. "I am High Strategist Velara, and you have done something today that I never expected from a human." Her voice softened, only slightly. "You have my attention, Lieutenant Commander." Elias wasn't sure what that meant, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Meridian Gate's alarms faded into the distance. Emergency teams moved through the sector restoring order. Crowds whispered as they passed, glancing at Elias with a mixture of curiosity and surprise. He had come to Meridian Gate simply to guard a diplomatic group. Instead, he had saved the daughter of the most influential and most suspicious Vraxian leader in the entire coalition. And nothing would be the same after today. The hours after the incident moved slowly for Elias Ward. Once the commercial sector stabilized and emergency systems returned to normal, the human delegation was escorted to a temporary meeting lounge. The diplomats were tense, whispering about political consequences, media attention, and whether the coalition leaders would accuse humanity of causing the malfunction. Elias didn't join their conversations. He simply sat on a bench near the window, quietly drinking water while watching repair drones drift through the station's exterior rings. His uniform smelled faintly of burned circuitry, a reminder of how close things had come to disaster. He replayed the moment again and again, the girl's frightened eyes, the sparks hitting the floor, the barrier sliding down just in time. It could have gone much worse. He was grateful it hadn't. Still, something about High Strategist Velara's final expression stayed in his mind. There had been suspicion. Yes, but also confusion. And Curiosity. Humans were used to suspicion. Curiosity from Vraxians was far more unusual. 20 minutes later, the lounge doors slid open with a soft hiss. A Vraxian officer in polished armor stepped inside. His gold eyes swept over the diplomats before settling on Elias. "Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward," the officer announced, voice firm but controlled. "You are requested for questioning by High Strategist Velara." The diplomats shifted nervously. Ambassador Darren Reed stood up. "Is this mandatory?" "Yes," the officer replied without hesitation. "The strategist has invoked Directive 17, Reed sighed. Directive 17 meant the request was not optional. It was a formal right, reserved only for high-ranking officials dealing with potential threats or potential political shifts. Elias rose calmly. "I'll go." Reed placed a hand on his arm. "Be cautious. She's powerful, and she's not known for being gentle with words." "I understand," Elias replied. "But she doesn't seem unreasonable." Reed gave him a sharp look. "You don't know Vraxian leaders." Elias only nodded and followed the officer out. The walk through Meridian Gate's administrative wing felt long. The halls were wide and quiet, lit by soft violet lights that reflected off silver-paneled walls. Vraxian artwork lined the corridors, geometric patterns, swirling star maps, sculptures made from shimmering mineral crystals. At last, the officer stopped in front of a large door marked with the insignia of the High Council. "She is expecting you," the guard said, then stepped aside. Elias entered. The room inside was spacious, with a high arched ceiling and a wide window overlooking the planet below. The air smelled faintly of cool metal and a hint of herbal incense. High Strategist Velara stood near the center of the room. She was facing the window, her long scaled coat reflecting the planet's blue-green light. When she turned to him, her expression was unreadable. Sharp, but calm. Calculating yet controlled. "Lieutenant Commander Ward," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." Elias bowed his head politely. "You summoned me." "Yes," she replied. "And I do not summon lightly." She gestured to a seat, but did not sit herself. Elias obeyed, settling into the chair while she walked slowly around the room, as if circling him like a scientist studying a strange new specimen. "You protected my daughter," she began. "You stepped directly into physical danger for someone you did not know, someone of a different species, someone who belongs to a group that does not trust yours." Elias kept his voice simple and honest. "She was a child. She was in danger. That is enough reason." Velara stopped walking. "You speak as if this is obvious." "It is, to me." She tilted her head slightly, her silver-blue scales catching the light. "Most humans I have observed take pride in their emotions. They speak loudly of ideals, yet act with self-interest." "That sounds like some humans," Elias admitted. "But not all." Velara narrowed her eyes. "Then why you? Why did you act with such disregard for your own safety?" Elias took a breath. "Because she needed help, and because that is how I was trained. But mostly, because I didn't want to watch her get hurt." For a long moment, the room was silent. Velara seemed to search his face, perhaps expecting to find arrogance, manipulation, or hidden motives. Instead, she found only sincerity. It unsettled her. "You confuse me," she said quietly. Elias blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Do not apologize," she replied sharply. "It is not an insult. It is an observation. I did not expect a human to act with such selflessness." "Selflessness," she resumed pacing, though slower now. "There are factions within the coalition," she continued. "Some believe your presence here is dangerous. Others believe humanity is unpredictable and unready for greater partnership." Elias nodded. "I've heard those opinions." "Then understand this," Velara said, stopping directly in front of him. "Your actions today will affect political lines. Some will accuse you of staging the incident. Some will call you reckless. And some will use this to argue that humans deserve greater trust." Elias met her gaze steadily. I can't control what people choose to think. No, she agreed. But I can. Elias raised an eyebrow. You intend to make a statement? I intend, she replied slowly, to understand the truth before I make any statement. She paused, then added in a lower tone, and I intend to understand you. Elias felt a flicker of surprise. Me? Yes. You are now connected to my daughter. And through her. To me. She walked to a nearby console and tapped a control. A hologram flickered to life, showing the footage of Elias shielding Sailry on the walkway. The angle, the sparks, the barrier, the desperate moment, it all felt more intense when replayed like this. Velara watched it silently. Elias watched her watching it. When the clip ended, Velara spoke again. There was no hesitation in you. No, Elias said softly. There wasn't. She faced him fully now. Humans continue to surprise me. That's not always good, Elias said with a small, dry smile. For the first time, Velara allowed the faintest hint of amusement to touch her eyes. It disappeared quickly, but it had been there. You will remain on Meridian Gate, she said suddenly. Elias straightened. That wasn't the plan. It is now. Elias tried to remain respectful. With all due respect, strategist, I have a delegation. They will remain as well, she interrupted. I have already contacted your ambassador. Elias stared. Why? Because I am not finished with my evaluation, she answered calmly. I require further conversation. I wish to observe your behavior, your reasoning, and the nature of human decision-making. Elias frowned slightly. You're studying me? Yes, Velara replied without shame. And you will cooperate. Elias took a slow breath. All right. If that is what's required, it is. She stepped closer, not threatening, just formal. And one more thing. Yes? My daughter Sailry has requested to see you again. Elias blinked. She did? She calls you Guardian Ward. Velara's tone softened barely enough to reveal she wasn't displeased. She rarely speaks so fondly of strangers. Elias wasn't sure what to say to that. Velara continued. You will meet her tomorrow morning. She wishes to thank you properly. That's fine, Elias replied gently. Velara's expression grew more complex, careful, thoughtful, almost reluctant. Understand this, human. I do not trust easily. And I do not offer gratitude lightly. Elias bowed his head. I know. But, she added softly, you have earned something from me today. Not trust. Not yet. But consideration. Elias met her eyes. That's enough. She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then she said, dismissed. Elias rose and left the room quietly, leaving the high strategist alone with her thoughts. Velara watched the door close, her sharp eyes narrowing in deep contemplation. Humans had always seemed chaotic and confusing. But Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward was something else entirely. And she was not ready to let him return to Earth, not now. And perhaps, not ever. The next morning, on Meridian Gate Station began with calm, artificial daylight. Soft melodies from public speakers, and the usual hum of starships docking in the outer rings. But inside her private office, High Strategist Velara felt anything but calm. She stood at her desk, reviewing the overnight reports, her long fingers tapping lightly against the glowing data panel. The council had already begun discussing the incident, the malfunction, the human's role in saving Sailry, and Velara's unexpected decision to keep the human delegation on the station. The debates were sharp, sometimes heated. Some officials believed Elias Ward's actions showed humanity's reliability. Others claimed it was too convenient, too perfectly timed to be an accident. One faction even wanted humans removed from the station until a full investigation was completed. Velara ignored them all for the moment. Her mind returned again and again to the moment she saw Elias shielding her daughter. It had been brief, only seconds, but the image refused to fade. She wanted to understand why. Elias Ward had slept very little. Not because of fear or stress, but because he kept thinking about Sailry and the strange turn of events. He could handle difficult missions, high-ranking officials, even political pressure. but he wasn't used to becoming the center of an interspecies debate. He didn't like that kind of attention. Still, when morning came and the Vraxian officer arrived to escort him, Elias followed without complaint. They walked through the administrative wing again. But this time, the halls felt different. Vraxian workers glanced at him with curious expressions. Some whispered softly after he passed. A few even nodded politely. He wasn't sure whether he should be honored or uncomfortable. At last, the officer stopped in front of a large door decorated with delicate crystal patterns. "You will meet the child inside," the officer said. "The strategist will join you shortly." Elias thanked him and stepped in. The room was warm and colorful, filled with soft cushions, floating holotoys, and a wide window overlooking the stars. Sailry sat cross-legged near the window, her gold eyes bright as she turned toward him. "Guardian Ward," she chirped, her voice full of energy. Elias smiled, surprised at how quickly she ran to him. "Hello, Sailry. How are you feeling today?" "Good," she said proudly. "Mama says I am strong. And she says you are, She thought for a moment. "You are unexpected." Elias laughed softly. "That might be the nicest thing I've heard all week." Sailry giggled and grabbed his hand. "Come, I want to show you something." She led him to a small holoprojector on the floor. She tapped a glowing button, and a tiny model of Meridian Gate Station appeared above the device. She zoomed in on the commercial sector until a small walkway appeared, the walkway where the incident had happened. "That is where you found me," Sailry said, her voice softer now. "I was scared." Elias knelt beside her. "Anyone would be. But you were very brave." The girl's gold eyes brightened. Mama said the same. A moment later, the door slid open again. High Strategist Velara entered the room. Her posture was straight, her expression controlled, but her eyes softened briefly as she looked at her daughter. She gave Sailry a small nod. "You may continue your lesson in the next room," she said. Sailry hugged her mother quickly, then Elias, and ran out with a cheerful bounce in her step. When the door closed, silence filled the room. Velara watched Elias for several seconds before speaking. "She has talked about nothing else since yesterday," she said. "Every word she says includes your name." Elias stood respectfully. "I'm glad she's doing well." "She is. And that is partly because of you." Her tone was calmer today, more measured, less defensive, yet still guarded. But before Elias could respond, a soft chime came from the wall console. Velara crossed the room and tapped the display. A hologram appeared, one of the high-ranking counselors. "Strategist Velara," the counselor said. "We require your presence. The internal investigation has begun, and there are questions about the humans' involvement." Elias tensed slightly, but Velara didn't react. Her voice remained steady. "I will join shortly," she said. "Begin without me." The counselor hesitated. "Strategist, they expect you now." "I said I will join shortly," Velara repeated, firmer this time. The counselor bowed and disappeared. Elias sighed. "Seems like the situation is getting more complicated." Velara turned to him. "The situation is becoming political. That is worse." "What are they saying?" "That humanity may have encouraged the malfunction to earn sympathy." Her jaw tightened. "It is foolish. But foolish ideas spread easily in times of mistrust." Elias shook his head. "That's not surprising." Velara studied him carefully. "You are calm, even when accused." "I've been a security officer a long time," Elias replied. "People say strange things when they're afraid or uncertain. I can't blame them." Her eyes narrowed, intrigued again. "Most humans I know react with defensiveness or anger. I react with patience," Elias said simply. "And why is that?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "Because anger closes doors. Patience opens them." Velara's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. She had spent years dealing with leaders, commanders, ambassadors, many of them loud, proud, and aggressive. Elias Ward was the opposite, soft-spoken, honest, steady. It was disarming in a way she wasn't used to. "Your patience," she said slowly. is going to make this much more difficult. Elias frowned. For you? For the council? She corrected, though the pause before speaking revealed more. Some already question my judgment. They will question it further if I defend you publicly. Elias stepped back slightly. You don't have to defend me. Just tell the truth. That is what concerns me, Valara replied, crossing her arms. The truth may shift political alliances. It may change how Vraxians view humanity. And it may force me to choose sides. Isn't that part of your job? Elias asked gently. Valara took a slow breath. My job is to act in the interest of the coalition. And yet... Her eyes rested on the walkway Model Sailry had left running. Part of me is still standing on that unstable platform, watching you protect my child. Elias said nothing. She continued, her voice quieter than ever. There were two forces pulling me yesterday, my duty as strategist, and my instinct as a mother. I have never allowed those two roles to collide so violently. And today? He asked softly. Today they are still colliding. Elias nodded. I understand. No, Valara said sharply. You do not. She stepped closer, her tone rising not in anger, but in frustration mixed with vulnerability. You saved my daughter, and because of that, I now see humanity differently. I see you differently. But the Council does not change its mind so easily. I'm not asking anyone to change their mind, Elias said. Just to be fair. Valara stared at him for several seconds. Then she admitted something she had never said aloud, not even to herself. I do not want to send you away. Elias blinked. What? But before he could say more, the wall console chimed again urgently this time. Strategist Valara, the counselor said. The faction leaders are here. They are demanding an explanation, and a full review of the human's role. Valara closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with renewed determination. Prepare my place at the table, she said. Of course. The hologram vanished. She looked at Elias. I must go. I understand. Valara began to walk toward the door but stopped halfway and turned back. I do not make promises, she said slowly. But I will say this. I will not allow lies to shape today's decisions. Elias nodded once. That's all anyone can ask. For a moment, Valara simply looked at him. Her expression was complex, respect, conflict, curiosity, and something deeper she was not ready to name. Then she left the room. Elias stood alone, watching the door slide shut. The station hummed softly around him, unaware that inside the High Council chamber, a political storm was waiting. And somewhere in that storm, Valara would have to choose whether to protect her people's fears, or defend the human who had protected her daughter. The High Council chamber of Meridian Gate Station was a room designed to impress. Its arches were tall, its light was soft but commanding, and its center ring where leaders gathered glowed with shifting patterns that reflected mood and discussion topic. Today, those lights were cold blue, signaling disagreement and tension. High Strategist Valara stepped into the chamber with her usual calm posture, though inside her thoughts moved quickly and sharply. Many eyes turned toward her. Some were respectful, some curious, some openly suspicious. The factions were already gathered, murmuring quietly among themselves. As she walked to her seat, Councillor Sirik, a hardline critic of humans, rose with a dramatic flare of his cloak. Strategist Valara, he began loudly. We must discuss the humans' involvement in yesterday's malfunction. There are troubling theories. Valara did not sit. Theories, fueled by fear, she replied calmly. Not facts. The councillors shifted in their seats. Councillor Sirik continued. Our data teams report that a human security officer was the first to reach the damaged platform. Quite convenient. Considering the timing, Valara's eyes narrowed. He reached the platform because he ran toward danger. Something none of your people thought to do. 4. A few councillors whispered at that. Sirik's voice hardened. And yet he has become a symbol. The media is spreading recordings of his rescue. And your own daughter calls him, what was it? Guardian Ward. It is improper for our political situation. Valara's jaw tightened. but she kept her tone cool. Her gratitude is not improper. It is honest. Sirek pointed at the holographic screen. We need to determine if humanity used this event to influence our decisions. Some factions already feel pressured. This entire incident could destabilize our alliances. Velara finally took her seat. She folded her hands, letting a long moment of silence fill the room before she spoke again. The incident was an accident. And how do you know that? Sirek demanded. Because I requested a private analysis from the engineering team, Velara said. They found evidence of an old hardware defect. It had nothing to do with humans. Whispers shot through the room. Sirek blinked. You withheld this information? I withheld it until I had the full report, Velara replied. Unlike some here, I do not speak before I know the truth. The chamber quieted. Velara looked around the room slowly. Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward saved my daughter with no hesitation. He acted with courage that had nothing to do with politics. And now, instead of honoring that, we accuse him of manipulation? Sirek opened his mouth, but Velara raised a hand firmly. Enough. I have heard your theories. Now hear mine. The counselors leaned forward. Humanity is unpredictable, Velara said. Yes. They are emotional. Yes. But they are also capable of deep compassion, surprising loyalty, and remarkable bravery. She paused, letting her gaze sweep the room. And if one human can show those qualities so clearly, then perhaps we have been too blind. Perhaps we have judged too quickly. Sirek scoffed. Strategist, your personal involvement clouds your judgment. Velara stood sharply. Clouds my judgment? She repeated, her voice rising in a rare show of emotion. I watched this human risk his life for a child who was not his own. I watched him choose her safety over everything else. That moment did not cloud my judgment. It clarified it. Silence fell through the chamber. Even the lights shifted from cold blue to a softer hue. Velara continued, her voice quieter but stronger. I will not let fear lead us. I will not let prejudice shape our policy. And I will not allow you to twist bravery into accusation. Sirek sat back, clearly unsettled. Another counselor, Elder Ramin, cleared her throat. Strategist Velara, she said gently, what do you propose? Velara looked around the chamber with steady eyes. We open a partnership program. A joint training initiative between humans and Vraxians. We build understanding instead of suspicion. And who will lead this program? Someone asked. Elder Ramin smiled slightly. I believe we all know who she has in mind. Velara took a deep breath. I nominate Lieutenant Commander Elias Ward as humanity's representative. The chamber erupted with argument, whispers, protests, approvals, but the tide had shifted. Her words carried weight. And after nearly an hour of debate, negotiation, and reluctant agreement, the motion passed. Elias Ward waited outside the chamber, leaning against a silver column. He didn't know what was happening inside, but he knew it was important. He also felt strangely calm about it. Whatever decision they made, he would accept it. He heard footsteps. The chamber doors slid open, and Velara stepped out. Her posture was different, relieved, though she tried to hide it. Elias took one look at her expression and knew something had changed. How did it go? He asked. Velara approached him slowly. Elias Ward, she said, her voice controlled but softer than usual. I have news. He waited. The Council has approved a new partnership program. Humans and Vraxians will work together on this station. A symbol of cooperation. A way to rebuild trust. That sounds promising, Elias said, and she continued, her eyes meeting his. They want you to lead the human side. Elias blinked. Me? But shouldn't someone higher ranking? No, Velara interrupted. They want you. I want you. Elias felt something warm spread through his chest. I'm honored. Really. There is more, Velara added quietly. The Council will allow you to choose whether you return to Earth or remain on Meridian Gate as our liaison. Elias raised an eyebrow. You already have a preference, don't you? Velara did not deny it. Scielry would be upset if you left. And you? Elias asked gently. The question hung in the air. Velara looked at him, really looked at him for a long moment. Her usual guarded expression softened in a way he had not seen before. I would prefer you stay, she said finally. Your presence is useful for diplomacy. And, she paused, and it has become important to my family. Elias felt his heart tighten not with discomfort, but with understanding. Velara was not a woman who expressed emotions easily. The fact that she had said even this much meant far more than the words themselves. I'll stay, Elias said. Velara blinked, surprised by the speed of his answer. You are certain? Yes, Elias replied. Meridian Gate feels like the right place to be. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Then it is settled, she said. I will arrange your quarters and contact your ambassador. Elias nodded. Thank you. But before Velara could turn away, the soft patter of feet echoed down the hall. Mama, Guardian Ward, Scielry ran toward them and flung herself into Elias's arms with pure joy. Elias lifted her easily, smiling. You're staying? Scielry asked breathlessly. Yes, Elias answered. I'm staying. Velara watched the scene, her daughter happily hugging the man who had saved her life, and the man responding with gentle patience that never felt forced. For the first time in years, something like hope settled in Velara's chest. Hope for her daughter. Hope for the coalition. Hope for something she did not yet dare to name. That evening, as the artificial sunset spread across the station's windows, Elias looked out at the stars from his new quarters. The planet below glowed softly. Ships drifted through the docking rings like fireflies. There was peace and possibility. A soft knock sounded at his door. When he opened it, Velara stood on the other side, calm posture, thoughtful expression. I wanted to tell you something before the new program begins, she said. What is it? Elias asked. Velara hesitated only a moment. You changed something today, she said. Not only for the council, not only for Scielry, but for me. Elias met her gaze. You changed something too, she exhaled slowly. This connection between us, it was not expected. No, Elias agreed softly. But good things usually aren't. Velara's eyes softened in a rare, unguarded way. I am glad you stayed. Elias offered her a quiet smile. So am I. And as the station lights dimmed, marking the start of artificial night, the two of them stood there, human and Vraxian, no longer strangers, no longer divided by mistrust, but connected by a moment of courage that had reshaped their futures. A future that belonged not to one species, but to both.